All right. Yeah. So yeah, first of all, thank you so much for making the time to do this and for accepting to meeting up to discuss different matters, all related, I guess, about to the solo performance practice, I guess. And I know you've been down this path for a while now, and that's why I thought of getting in touch with you to discuss some matters that I'm currently busy with my PhD thesis as well. So, yeah, let's just dive into it. Could you talk a bit about your music background to for me to better understand where the sort of experience started from, what pushed you to start this practice, and what are or were your references when you started?
Yeah, sure. Um, so I would say I started off kind of, jazz is primarily where I'm coming from. And I think over the years, I've been curious about kind of exploring the different extremes of the drum set, and also different configurations. And yeah, two, I guess, contexts that I really love, have loved exploring is sort of the drums in like a large ensemble context, and then also the drums in a solo context. And so, yeah, I started, I guess, exploring acoustic solo drums maybe about 2 or 3 years ago. And, of course, there's a long history of solo percussion and drum set. And I think I was interested in challenging myself to be able to still, um, play something compellingly as a solo, um, musician, and throughout the course of a set, be able to, um, yeah, tell some sort of story or some sort of, yeah, have some sort of theme in it. And I guess one of the things that I'm really drawn to with drums is like how to create resonance through the percussion and create like a sense of melody and harmony. And so I'm really, yeah, interested in kind of um, like developing a set around like decay and these things that I think normally aren't um, or as thought of like in drum set language.
Yeah.
Mm. So that's where I started, and then electronics kind of came in afterwards, I think, to um, continue developing those parts and be in conversation with like the acoustic elements as well. So it's still very much a work in progress, but um, I feel like as I'm going, I'm uncovering new things that I'm interested in and pivoting and checking out a lot of gear, a lot of synths, and just experimenting as I'm going.
Yeah, of course. So you started from a more acoustic set, and then like what's your process in terms of integrating different electronics? Like you just like bring, to your solo performances whatever you're working with at the moment, like in the moment, um, or do you have like a fix set that you've been touring with lately in terms of setup?
In terms of setup right now, it's very much in flux. So um, I am I'm exploring. So I've always been really interested in gongs and part of the resonance idea and almost creating drones with the gongs. And so I'm uh, exploring gear right now that can do that. But usually I would say um, I kind of take some time in between performing to just work at home and, and to figure some things out. I would like to get to the point where I can sort of improvise, fluidly with electronics as I do acoustically. But right now I'm still sort of figuring out, what works. And yeah, I want to be at a place where I know how the electronics respond generally to the drums. For example, like a tom and a certain with a certain mic or a certain synth, like know um, sort of what effect or what sort of like zone that sound would generate, so that I can more intentionally sculpt a set. So right now I'm in sort of like a gestational period with all of that.
Okay. So what kind of gears are you using at the moment, for example?
So right now I have some of like the hologram electronic stuff, if you're familiar with that.
Yep.
I have just, a basic like micro synth, keyboard synth. Um, and then Ableton. I use Ableton a lot to um, mostly even the native plugins to create a set. So that's what I'm working with. It's still very it's not a lot of gear at all, but I think there's a lot even just within those tools that you know that I haven't explored yet. So um,
Definitely. Yeah. And with Ableton, are you using it more um like to use samples or more for the synthesizers within Ableton to kind of process your acoustic output?
I'm using a lot of like just the audio effects and some synthesizers as well.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm trying to, integrate the acoustic and electronic worlds a little bit more so that, it's not necessarily kind of like creating a zone with electronics and then like
Playing on
starting
top.
over.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, yeah, trying to just figure out like the conversation between those two.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. No, but it's remarkable that you started like just performing like just with a acoustic set because the rawness of that really that's something that really frightens me. It's because like you're so exposed, so naked because it's just like when you hit a stroke, when you play something, then it's gone immediately. So I guess like in the integration with the electronic, it's something that we all kind of like get interested in, like kind of to overcome also that void a bit, I guess. So but that's nice to know that you kind of also embraced that rawness and that yeah of the acoustic set. And so in your solo performances, what would you say is the role of composition, programming, maybe with Ableton and improvisation? How do you structure your set if you do structure them?
Definitely. Well, I think the gestational period I mentioned earlier, that's basically kind of like the compositional process is figuring out, how the electronics sort of respond to different source material um, and and then maybe sculpting or having some sort of basic arc or trajectory. Right now, it's a little bit more locked in because I'm still, figuring out like what works. But eventually, yeah, I'd like to sort of, create less parameters, but know generally where I'm going and kind of, improvise my way through them. But yeah, composition, I would say, is a big part, and it's the thing that I think having having that there sort of allows me to, in the live set, to be freer with what I'm doing.
Yeah, and so for composition, do you mean like you have like written out materials that you know that you can go through, or like patterns that you can have access to, or more like, some textural frameworks that you know like you can dive into, and that's a section basically of the performance.
Yeah, definitely the last one, sort of textural frameworks,
Mhm.
uh, general zones and um, and sometimes like that's just like a limitation, being like, okay, this effect with these sort of sounds or um, maybe something on like the snare, for example, is not gonna react very well with like with the gongs. And so this section is sort of like, you know, primarily like snare generated like
Yeah.
sounds.
Yeah.
It's just stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I see. Okay. Um, and what has the process been for you of like adapting your more like conventional drumming gestures to, to this like hybrid instrument that you're building? I guess also like in terms of like developing, new techniques, like in order to control like whether Ableton through MIDI controllers or synthesizers with a hand, and then being able to produce more maybe traditional percussive sound with the other. If you have any thoughts about this.
Yeah, I would say it's it's sort of I try to play as I do with the electronics. So um, it's sort of adapting the electronics to the acoustic and how I play. Um, and sometimes I'm maybe pushing for like to play in a certain way that I might not do on like an acoustic set. But generally I yeah, I try to not worry about that so much when I'm playing and just really develop the material around what feels like comfortable on like a like kinesthetic level.
Yeah, okay, yeah. But I guess like in terms of like learning how to, for example, coordinate, your more like drum gestures to like whether playing a keyboard or like
Yeah,
twisting a knob or something. Is it something that you've been going through, and maybe you've found like solutions for that work for you, or
definitely. Yeah, I see what you mean. It is a bit of a choreography that I have to practice once I figure out sort of the flow of things. Um, yeah, and also for that reason, you know, being able to, not have to, being able to be in the moment and like switch a sound, or trigger different electronics is something I've been thinking about. Because, having to pull away to, you know, trigger something or to play a sample can kind of disrupt the moment. So I've been working more with like foot pedals and then also automating some things as well so that I don't have to really think about that. But that also brings in like, another question of like it's another limitation in terms of composition. And because I used to have like a much more automated set. Um, and that was fun, because I could really like push and lean into certain structures because I knew how long
it would
certain
last?
sets would be. But as I'm trying to open things up more and improvise more, that's something like I have to practice the choreography of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you use the drum set itself as a, like as a way to trigger certain electronic features of yours, or
Yeah, I do work with Sunhouse a little bit. And so some of those things, you can kind of trigger just even different effects without it actually triggering a drum sound. And so that's something I'm exploring as well. Um, but it is a little bit difficult sometimes to figure out gear that's in conversation with each other, especially if they're different kind of like impulses to, you know, to control it. So, sometimes you pressing something versus like triggering something with like with a stick versus like pedals, like it's all it can be it can get complicated very easily. And so I'm trying to find a more, I guess, like a more streamlined approach with electronics so that I think the less I have to think about it,
The
the better.
better it is. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's true as you were saying before that, like if you ha like having to think about electronic less can also mean more programming and having more things like already set presets basically, which is cool. But then of course, like like this relationship between what's improvised and what's composed gets a bit unbalanced. Like yeah, so the program then the composed material can get much more than the improvised one, and so like that may feel a bit restraining, I guess, in the performance. But anyway, yeah, that's yeah, and also I guess I don't know if that's something that you're experiencing as well, like in terms of like what dose to use, like whether using the sensory percussion standalone DAW or like having it passing through Ableton, like having to switch between all these different DAWs. That's also something that had been very hard for me, like in the last few years. So I mean, now I decided to do everything through Max and forget about everything else because I felt it was something that was starting to be a bit disturbing for me. I don't know if it's something that you can relate to.
Yeah, I think for me, electronics are honestly very unintuitive.
For me too. Yeah.
I've tried maybe 5 or 6 times to approach it and have taken time off and gone back to just like acoustic sets. And so I, yeah, I think finding a way for it to feel, or just to get like to the music the quickest
Yep.
and have it not be such like an impediment for me is important. And of course, there are new skills and new things to learn with electronics. But yeah, as long for me as I'm like thinking about it still in like a cohesive and like musical way, um, then I know I'll be kind of motivated to keep exploring.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. No, definitely. And before you mentioned that when you approached drum solo practice, first you were really interested in kind of like the resonance of the sounds of the gongs or the drums themselves. And so I wanted to ask you, what is the relationship to the performing space for in your solo practice? Like, do you have special procedures in terms of sound check, in terms of like the placement of your set? Yeah, if you have any thoughts about this.
Yeah, I think that just making sure that the instrument, first of all, is like set up in a way that makes sense in this space, um, in relationship to the speakers, in relationship to the audience. Um, and then, especially with the electronics, like making sure that the system that it's playing through, that like, you know, if it needs EQing, if there are EQs that I've already set on it based on, my own speakers, how that might change in the space. Um, So that I do think, yeah, sound check is a very, I think, important process of, everything that, we would work on like to construct the set to make sure that that like speaks really clearly in the room. Um, and yes, some spaces also aren't super conducive to certain sounds. And so I think being flexible and also being okay with, not using something that you've prepared.
Adapting
Um,
to the space.
yeah, yeah, just being flexible, I think, is really important. Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. And in terms of sound, I forgot to ask you before, do you like do you have like a little mixing desk or something or an interface and you control the level of your electronics, or are you in control of like also like the mics which are amplifying your set, or do you leave that to the house engineer?
I try to generally get like a threshold that I know works well. Um, and then, if you have a relationship too with like the engineer and there's trust, um, I depending on that, like I might let that engineer do more if if they really know the space that they're in, then I think it makes sense to sort of, let them do their thing. So, um, yeah, so it really depends. I don't have a mixing or a mixer yet with me. Um, so right now it's mostly just like all on the DAW
Mhm.
that everything is sort of like preset. But eventually, yeah, those are aspects that I'd like to expand on more.
Yeah, so for now you keep like the electronics and the acoustic sound separated, or like all the inputs, like I don't know if you have like four channels, like bass drum, snare, and the two overheads go through your interface, and you control like those four signals through your computer. That's what you do. Okay.
Yeah, I do that through the DAW.
Yeah.
Yeah. But of course, like, getting to the space and depending on, what it needs, like all of those
Yeah.
things might,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, so it's really a lot on you in terms of like the responsibility of the sound in this sense. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the tricky and exciting thing about electronics. It's like there's so much you can do. Like there's no it feels like there's no end to it.
Yeah.
With the degree of like um control and clarity and specificity that you can get to. Um and yeah, I think that like knowing what is like the priority, I guess, is something that I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Super interesting. And do you have thoughts about, like the role of the audience in your solo performance, or if the listener has a particular active role in your performance, or what's your feeling about performing solo in front of an audience? If it's different than performing, with others.
Yeah, I definitely have a different feeling performing by myself than with others. Like you said, there's more responsibility. I think, there's more to worry about. I think with electronics, there's more that can go wrong. Even just on like a pure sound and technical level. Um, but I think that generally, if I'm connected to what I'm playing, I trust that that will transmit to the audience. Um, I do think the audience has like an active role in what what they're giving back. But I try to focus sort of primarily on my connection to the music. Yeah, I've always found like, you know, music or the performances that I've connected to the most as an audience member are when like the musicians themselves are connected to each other and they're really sort of attentive and engaged and not necessarily like um, trying to have some sort of like external focus or on like delivering something to the audience. So yeah, I try to just kind of keep like an internal focus when I'm playing and usually I know when I'm able to do that that you
That it
know
will come through to like the honesty of of the performing act will come through. Yeah, yeah. Wow. Cool. And I guess like maybe you mentioned it before a little bit, but I'm just gonna ask you this again. Why do you like performing solo? Like, why did you choose like to go down this path? And why do you keep on researching this in this environment?
yeah. Um, I think part of it is the challenge for sure. I think it's really interesting to try to explore the corners of drum set language um and also to to try to within the solo context like explore the depth and the breadth of what I love in other music that might not be solo. So trying to, think about the idea of like a quintet, for example, like as like a solo or, um, like a large ensemble as like a solo, and have, uh, yeah, and to be in conversation like with myself. Um, I think it's been like a deeply introspective process for me, working on solo, and I think that it's definitely made me think of playing in different ways when I'm then playing with other people.
Mhm.
So I definitely think, yeah, there's a lot that I'm learning, and there's a lot I'm curious about, and so that's what keeps me going.
Cool, 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 cool. Yeah. Nice. And like, do you have like a method that you use in terms of like keep on, going um with the solo exploration? Like, I don't know, like you record yourself, you listen back and you look at the videos, or is it more like like more like intuitive as an approach?
I would say it's mostly all trial and error. Um, yeah, spending a lot of time trying to get to know get to know a synth, um, setting up mics on different parts of the instrument, putting effects on different parts of the instrument. Yeah, and then trying it out and seeing what works. And I think there's like a lot through performance that's like iterative. Um, I don't always like listen back to a performance, but um, I think there's a lot of information in the performance with like how it feels. Sometimes, it can feel really, I don't know, tricky or something that felt like really good while I was like practicing it, then felt weird or something. So I like to reflect on all of that and and then maybe change like one small aspect for the next.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think like taking taking time and being patient like with the process and not putting like pressure on myself to like invent like an entirely new set every time.
Oh, yeah,
Um like, has been good.
yeah, yeah, no, of course not. Okay. Yeah. Now I wanted to ask you a few questions about your perspective on gender and ethnical identity and in relationship to drumming and solo practice. So I guess like in the collective imagination, the drummer or the percussionist is often stereotyped as a cisgender male figure associated with features of strength, virility, speed, and technical virtuosity. And so I wanted to ask you if, in your experience, do you think there is a relationship between your playing and your gender and ethnicity? And I don't mean this necessarily like in a physical way, like I'm a woman, so I have weaker arms or whatever, and so like I cannot play as strong as as a man, for example, in my case. So yes, but I'm more interested in knowing if the psychological impact of being a woman or a non-binary identifying person somehow has influenced your artistic output and your aesthetic choices.
Mm. I would say there's not a relationship
Okay.
there for I think that there are definitely more feminine and more masculine aspects within music. Um, there's like, aggression, there's mystery, there's um, sensuality. I think all of these different expressions that that might be categorized along a certain like gender spectrum, but I think all of those are available to the performer regardless of gender. And so I try to embrace all of those things, all of those qualities when I'm playing. I'm interested in yeah, capturing um I guess as much emotional complexity as I can um, when I'm playing and yeah, and the artists that inspire me are, I think, ones that feel like all of those qualities are available to them as well.
Hmm. Okay. Um, yeah. So, so you don't think that necessarily like some identity aspects shaped or the impact of being a non-binary identifying person in this society like shaped your yeah like maybe I can give you an example like to better explain what I mean here. Like I guess like growing up as a girl in the 90s and starting practicing the drums when I was 5. I was always like super afraid to play loud. 'Cause like, like as I guess it's like an educational, patriarchal, thing, that they wanted to be as a girl, they wanted to be, quiet, respectful, and just like nice and kind. And I remember that, like growing up, like with, peers and colleagues, other drummers, I was always like the one who was kind of like afraid of like the impactfulness of the instrument, which is like such a then ours is such a dynamic one. And so that's something that that I still notice nowadays, and now I kind of like managed to like to twist it in it kind of in my to my benefit. But yeah, I don't know. I've realized this thing, and I think, I mean, there's something there in terms of like the correlation of like the impact of like our own identity, whether that being, you know, like in terms of gender or ethnicity on the music we play. So yeah, I don't know if like that brings any other thoughts to you.
Yeah. Um, I think for me, music has always been some sort of like sacred place. Um, I think it's a place where um, I'm not really thinking about my identity in at least in a conscious way. Like I think that it's all there subconsciously and um, I think there all of that hopefully is being hopefully I'm able to kind of like you know harness in a personal way. But I don't think there's like a one-to-one relationship for me in terms of identity and expression on the instrument. I think that maybe in some more maybe complex or mysterious ways there might be. Um, for example, like growing up as like the child of immigrants, and thinking about like place and belonging a lot. Maybe in some way that sort of that sort of questioning might be translated in some like uh, maybe subconscious way, or maybe some sort of abstract way. But yeah, it's hard to necessarily like trace, I think, like a one-to-one relationship between those
No, no,
things.
definitely. It's super hard.
Yeah.
That's what I'm kind of like stubbornly going for also like in my PhD research, but it's very difficult to prove. I mean, I feel that there's something there, but it's you know, it's difficult to show that anthropologically, I think. But anyway, so when you began exploring solo work and drums augmentation, did you were you like intentionally trying to move away from like some more like conventional or traditional roles associated to drumming and the historical and anthropological, you know, figure of the drummer, like the one who keeps time, who calms, you know, the band and I don't was that something that you were kind of like also kind of like growing up with studying jazz and with that, you know, firm and sometimes like rigid. Can I say that tradition? Um, like was the solo attempt kind of like a way for you also to kind of like change direction or distance yourself or from, you know, yeah, like those like more conventional functions of the drummer?
Mm, I don't think so. Yeah, I think for me, I was just curious about um, finding finding or following my interests in a more just like general musical way. And then being like, okay, how can I do that on drum set? Um, yeah, I think that, you know, the role of the drummer historically and, the way that the lineage of drums has been like developed in the jazz tradition, like those are all things I really embrace and love about the drum set. And so I think it's sort of like taking all of that and then trying to build on that.
like take a step forward or something. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So you don't feel it as a kind of like also like the fact of, you being so active in the creative music scene, you don't feel it as like an attempt to trying to like liberate yourself from, some like historical drumming constraints and drumming rules. But you feel it's really kind of like about building upon those foundations.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think there's a lot of liberation that can be found like within the ways that drummers have played historically too. And so for me, it's about taking all of those things and then I think on a more like personal level, just following following those curiosities.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I guess that's about it. Do you anything else do you think I should know about your practice or I don't know, something that we didn't touch upon that you think it would be important um to deepen?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like we went through a lot.
No, no, yeah, we definitely did. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing your perspective and for helping me out, kind of like broadening my spectrum of of people I'm talking to kind of like get a better understanding about this whole matter.
Thank
Yay,
you very much for inviting me.
of course.